Alert! Putin breaks his silence with massive announcement about Kim Jong-un, Trump stunned. Russian President Vladimir Putin has told world leaders to stop intimidating North Korea following the dictatorship's latest missile test. Putin said attempts to bully Kim Jong-un's regime were unacceptable, though he admitted the missile test was equally wrong. America and South Korea led calls for fresh sanctions after Kim tested a newly developed Hwasong-12 ballistic missile on Sunday, which the dictator claimed was capable of carrying a nuclear warhead to the U.S. Putin said, "We are categorically against the expansion of the club of nuclear powers. We consider the missile test counterproductive, harmful and dangerous. But," he added, "we must stop intimidating North Korea and find a peaceful solution to this problem." Speaking at a Chinese economic summit, Putin also denied that the test had posed any threat to Russia, despite the weapon landing 60 miles off his nation's east coast. The Russian premier said peaceful talks must be held to resolve escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula. Putin joins China and new South Korean President Moon Jae-in in calling for talks with the North. If discussions could be arranged, it would mark the first significant development in diplomacy with North Korea since the nation pulled out of six-party talks in 2009. President Trump said earlier this month that he would be willing to participate in talks under the right circumstances, though his administration said that possibility was slim after the missile launch. Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, told ABC's This Week that having a missile test is not the way to sit down with the president, because he's absolutely not going to do it. Experts believe the North's new missile is the longest-range weapon ever successfully tested by the isolated nation. After being fired from a launch pad in the Hwasong region early on Sunday, the projectile traveled around 500 miles before dropping into the Sea of Japan. Analysts say the missile was fired at an upward trajectory to artificially limit its range during the test. Fired in a straighter line, they estimated would have a range of at least 2,500 miles. While that is significantly longer than the range of its other missiles, it still falls around 3,000 miles short of the U.S. mainland. Kim Jong-un personally oversaw the missile launch on Sunday, and was pictured celebrating with his officials afterward. The ruler also pledged further missile tests and nuclear detonations, despite repeated warnings by President Trump. Breaking: Trump just gave Callista Gingrich the best job of her life. President Donald Trump will name Callista Gingrich, wife of former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, ambassador to the Vatican in the next few weeks, CNN reports. Gingrich has been the White House's favorite for the ambassadorship for months, but her nomination has been held up pending approval from the Office of Government Ethics, an administration official told CNN. Callista, the third wife of Newt Gingrich, is credited with convincing her husband to convert to Roman Catholicism. The couple met Pope Francis briefly in a trip to the Vatican in 2014, according to their blog. She's under consideration for the Vatican ambassadorship, Newt said shortly after Trump's inauguration in January. The White House hopes to nominate Gingrich before Trump's trip to Rome May 24 to meet with Pope Francis. Trump and the Pope have vastly different opinions, but Francis said he will not pass judgment on the president until they meet face to face. Topics will emerge in our conversations. I will say what I think, and he will say what he thinks. But I have never wanted to make a judgment without first listening to the person, Francis told reporters Saturday. Even if one thinks differently, we have to be very sincere about what each one thinks, Francis said. Francis has criticized two of Trump's main campaign promises. Francis said the idea of a southern border wall is unchristian, and denying refugees entry into a country is uncharitable. Revealed, Hawaii just showed North Korea its secret weapon to destroy Kim Jong-un. The threat from North Korea is very real. Although the communist dictatorship does not have the best missiles in the world, nor the best military, they remain poised to strike at one of our allies with some serious hardware. Under President Donald Trump, Pyongyang is no longer being humored. In Hawaii, the U.S. Department of Transportation just rolled out a missile telemetry ship called the MV Pacific Collector, a 393-foot ship designed for missile defense. The MV Pacific Collector, which currently sits in the port of Aloha, is designed to intercept ballistic missiles that are fired from the ground. Almost all of North Korea's weapons systems are ground-based. Just this weekend, North Korea test-fired a ballistic missile that sputtered into the ocean. The U.S. Pacific Command claimed that the missile fired was not consistent with an intercontinental ballistic missile. North Korea's bad behavior is not only a UN violation, but it comes just after South Korea elected Moon Jae-in, a liberal, and a former human rights lawyer who sought to create a more open dialogue with Pyongyang. Thanks to this missile launch, the brand new president had to release a presser saying, "The president expressed deep regret over the fact that this reckless provocation occurred just days after a new government was launched in South Korea." As much as President Moon may want to head off further conflict with North Korea, dictator Kim Jong-un may make things impossible. North Korea's actions, while clearly intended to intimidate the good people of Seoul, were also meant as a warning against the upcoming war games exercises involving South Korea, the US, Japan, and Europe. North Korea has long maintained the position that these military exercises are training programs for a future invasion of their homeland, and as a result, they launch missiles in order to keep possible invaders at bay. The one thing that these missile tests have accomplished is establishing a greater sense of urgency in Washington and Tokyo. In Congress, lawmakers are currently scrambling to find the funding, and the will, to build up new missile defense systems. After getting the cold shoulder from the Obama administration for 8 years, R&D spending on military technology may be on the rise, and it's all thanks to President Trump. No longer are we going to run from some pot-bellied dictator. President Donald Trump has shown a willingness to confront the communist monster head-on. Pyongyang is about to realize that they're threatening a new America. What should be done about the threat from North Korea? Please share the story on Facebook and tell us what you think because we want to hear your voice. Just in, President Trump makes history, and America reaps the $10 billion windfall. Why are liberals upset with President Trump? He's setting a very dangerous precedent. He is keeping his campaign promises. Remember when he said he'd donate 100% of his presidential salary? Remember how liberals said it would never happen? Well, in case you missed it, it just did. Going back, it's clear Democrats thought Hillary had the election in the bag. As a result, they treated the promises Mr. Trump made while campaigning with their usual condescending derision. Then he won. Now the left's strategy has changed from smug superiority and cockiness to one that faces the reality that all Trump's promises are starting to happen. No wonder Nancy Pelosi babbles incoherently when interviewed. This business of the keeping of campaign promises is totally foreign to establishment Washington. But they had best get used to it. Check this out, President Trump promised he would roll back regulations and save Americans money. Guess what? Just in, from Bloomberg. The White House estimates it will save $10 billion over 20 years by having rescinded 11 Obama-era regulations under a relatively obscure 1996 law that lets Congress fast-track repeal legislation with a simple majority. What he is doing, in concert with a Republican-led Congress, is using the Congressional Review Act in order to rescind many Obama regulations and directives issued in the final months of his administration. So a lot of that stuff that was meant to hamstring President Trump is biting the dust. This has to be horrifying for Obama, especially as the Trump wiretapping scandal heats up and threatens to engulf the former president and his staff. As if he doesn't have enough problems already. And President Trump isn't finished yet. About 24 measures with CRAs targeting them remain. That crashing sound you hear is what exists of Mr. Obama's legacy getting smashed to pieces and hitting the floor. Breaking, Russia connection found, 75,000 shares of Putin Energy Company. OMG. New connections to Russia emerge, as Democrats flounder to accuse President Trump of being Vladimir Putin's puppet. But it's who those connections line up with that will have you up in arms. New evidence indicates that Hillary Clinton was colluding with the Russian government. Hillary's campaign manager, John Podesta, was on the board of directors for a Kremlin-financed energy company that gave him 75,000 shares. Via Investors Business Daily. WikiLeaks revealed in March of this year that Podesta was on the board of Jules Unlimited between 2010 and 2014, leaving only to join the Obama administration as a senior advisor. Podesta failed to disclose his position on the board when filing his financial disclosures, which is required by law, upon entering the White House. John Podesta established the shell company Leonardo Holdings, in his daughter's names, no less, and positioned it to receive the Kremlin money just 10 days before he was officially employed by Obama. Essentially, Podesta was paid huge sums of money by a Russian-backed energy company before he became a powerful political advisor. Worse still, he kept the ties secret. That's treason, Mr. Podesta. This connection was discovered by WikiLeaks during their investigation into John Podesta's private emails, which were leaked to the public early last year. During the election, the Hillary Clinton campaign struggled and tried to distract us from her numerous email leaks, many of which revealed backdoor deals, as well as Clinton-backed pay-to-play scams. Hillary Clinton had numerous other ties to the Russian government. She personally received millions of dollars in donations after her State Department agreed to grant the Kremlin control of 20%